Hey everyone, welcome to It Tastes Different Gaming Appetizers. And what are we talking about this time? Well, Square Enix may have listened to us, heard us from the great beyond, and said, hey, maybe we need to send our games multi-platform, right? So we've talked about this several times, how they should stay, because they've been talking about how Final Fantasy 16 and Final Fantasy 7 are just not making their forecast. And I wonder why. Well, it's probably because you're putting it on one system when you could be putting it on everything, making it multi-platform and probably making a lot more money, because not everybody plays PlayStation. There's a lot of people that are just Xbox and there's a lot of people that are just PC. And so you're missing out on that crowd of individuals. So Square Enix, they basically want to go, they want to stay, they want to stray away from exclusivity after their profits drop. So even though Square Enix and Sony partnership goes way back, they continue to go with PlayStation, but they've got to make a change. In the latest earnings release, Square Enix reports a profit drop of 69.7% year over year, thanks in part to the MMO and mobile declines. So MMOs, they ebb and flow, right? It'll go back up once the Dawn Trail comes out for Final Fantasy 14. The player count and everything like that will skyrocket during the release of that expansion. And mobile decline. So mobile games are going down, right? And at least for Square Enix in their mobile offering, right? It may not be with everything, but Square Enix has tried to make a lot of mobile games, and they've come and gone about as quickly as they've put them out there. So they haven't done so hot in the mobile space. And also growing operating losses from high development costs, even if sales are up slightly. So what they're saying is, like, basically development cost, the MMOs, the mobile, kind of all tracking down, development costs being a lot higher nowadays. Even though they are selling more software, that it's not meeting up with the demand of the rising technology and market as far as developing a game is, right? Developing a game anymore is very expensive, depending on what the game you're making. And for a company like Square Enix, they're always shooting for, AAA type of games. So, but the company has made it clear it plans to make the most of these high development costs with releases on more platforms. Square Enix will aggressively pursue a multi-platform strategy that includes Nintendo platforms, PlayStation, Xbox, and PC, it says. Many of Square Enix's biggest games have been locked into one platform partnership, with last year's Final Fantasy 16 and this year's Final Fantasy 7 Rebirth, both out on a single system, the PlayStation 5. Even if that console is very popular, Square Enix now fully understands they cannot limit themselves to this strategy, no matter what kind of relationship they have with Sony, which we've talked about before, right? You can't, and this is the same not just between Square and Sony, but even if it was flipped and it was Square and Microsoft, and these games were just coming out for the Xbox, you can't limit yourself to just one device. You're missing out on a whole swath of people that just don't play on that device, right? Or they prefer it on something else, right? Depending on what the game is. So it makes sense that you have to make those games multi-platform. You have to put them out there on as many things as you can. Some are saying this reflects poorly on Sony, but any of these other companies would lock up exclusive third-party deals for big games. So yeah, I mean, basically, anybody would do this. So you can't blame Sony for wanting to lock up big games on their system. That's not blaming them. It's more blaming Square Enix for locking it down, taking that exclusivity. And that's not for Square either. That's for all those big developers out there, those big publishers. Unless you're owned by the company, you should really put your stuff out on everything. You're just going to make more money that way. The only ones that don't are a lot of the Japanese developers, which makes sense, right? Because the Xbox is not very popular in Japan. So there's no point for them to develop games created in Japan that do come to the US. Those usually typically only come out on PC and the PlayStation, which more than likely those Japan companies usually only create for those devices because those are what's popular over there. And they're not really thinking about the North American market, where Xbox is. I mean, PlayStation is still the more popular platform than Nintendo, but Xbox has more of a foothold in the US than it does in other places. So, yeah, I mean, basically, exclusivities are not going to go away, but I think this is good for Square Enix. Square Enix has a new president now, and they're shifting focus and thinking of, we need to bring these out on more platforms, and this gives the chance for those individuals that want to play these games to be able to do so, right? If you own an Xbox or if you own only a PC, Final Fantasy VII Remake eventually came to PC, but it took quite a while, right? And I'm sure Rebirth will as well. But you've got to really get away from these. In 16 would have definitely had a higher advantage, I think, releasing multi-platform than it did just on PlayStation 5. Like 16, I don't know the sales records for 16, but Square Enix says it didn't do very well. And I think the exclusivity of it just being out on the PlayStation is what really primarily hurt 16. I think 16 was a good game overall, but we've talked about 16 before. I liked 16. I enjoyed 16. I beat it. I thought it was a great game, good story and everything like that. But if they didn't have Final Fantasy in the name, you would never know it was a Final Fantasy game. Besides the summons, that have familiar names, like in the familiar characters that they always have, like Sid and things like that. They could have called it Clive's Big Adventure, and you would think it's a totally different game because you wouldn't know it was a Final Fantasy game. It had other, besides like the stuff that they had in the game that was kind of an homage to Final Fantasy. If they would have taken all that stuff out, you would never know. They could call it something completely different. You wouldn't even think like, wow, this kind of looks like a Final Fantasy game. You wouldn't even think that at all. You would think like, oh, this is a cool new game that they've created, right?
Yeah,
because it was so different.
They could have called it The Spirits Within.
They could have called it The Spirits Within, right?
Yeah. Please tell me more people catch that reference than just me and you.
And it got Alec Baldwin to be the well, it wasn't the main protagonist, but part of the main protagonist.
Yeah. Yeah. And
the main
Steve
protagonist
Buscemi.
was the lady. Yeah. And Steve Buscemi. And the girl was the main protagonist, which I don't remember her name. I don't even know who did the voice for her.
Hey, lady. I have no idea who that was.
I don't know. And then, what was it? I think it was Sid was the Keith Sutherland's dad, right?
Yeah, Donald Sutherland.
Yeah, Donald Sutherland.
Yep.
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah, he has a name. Okay, he's not just the guy who produced Kiefer Sutherland. God,
I don't remember his name. Okay, I couldn't think of it. Anyway, yeah, Spirits Within. Watch it sometime, or don't. I don't know. I like The Spirits Within. I know it's not a great movie, but I enjoy it. I've seen it a lot of times, probably more than I should admit.
Yep, same.
So I used to own it on DVD back in the day.
I used to own it on VHS.
I don't think it came out on VHS.
I think it did.
Did it?
I don't know. But anyways, while you Google up that ancient reference.
Yeah, what do you think of this?
Yeah, Square Enix, they need to definitely let Sony know that they want to be in an open relationship, plain and simple. Financially, it makes sense. Now, development costs for multiple platforms, I don't get into all that. I don't know all that. But financially, to me, it makes more sense. PC especially, it just doesn't make sense to keep it to one console or one platform when you can make multiple different streams of revenue from that one product. Final Fantasy 16, it would probably add another 30% to its sales if they'd have just released on Xbox alone. Because I would have bought it on Xbox anyways. That would have been my preferred medium. But PC sales, I guarantee, would have tipped the scales a lot higher on that thing. Now, granted, I get the whole exclusivity thing. Sony dropping a few bucks to keep it on their platform for a while. But Square Enix has got to do the math. Is it worth it? They gave me $10 million to keep it on PlayStation for a year. I have no idea how much the exclusivities are. I'm just throwing numbers, and they're like, okay, well, sure, but they're not doing the math on what they could make off of Xbox, Steam, Nintendo. That's a big thing. But the good news is, if this is true and they are going to open this up, I think we got a lot more chances seeing Final Fantasy VII remake and remaster, or remake and rebirth. Excuse me. God, I hate those namings. On Steam, Xbox, and maybe not Nintendo. I don't know if Nintendo could handle that. They would probably have to stream it on there or some crap. But two more additional platforms would help it out greatly. I mean, there's a lot of Xbox players who don't own PlayStation. They'd be willing to buy it. They've been holding off and hoping that they could get a remake. That's going to open it up. Then you've got the whole Steam market. I mean, Steam is a dominating force that you just don't mess with. You're going to get some big sales off of that. So, but they definitely need to open up, and more publishers need to do that. Now, there's certain, developers need to do that. Now, there's certain companies, developers that need to, they're smaller. They need that few extra bucks to push their game over the line. And I can understand the exclusivity deals there. But if you don't have to go exclusive, then to me, it makes no sense to do it. So that's just, it's just closing half of your wallet. It doesn't make sense to me. So, I'd be like an Uber driver saying, I'm only going to go to this side of town. No, you hit the whole damn town, make that buck, and shut up. So Final Fantasy is a great series. It's a huge series. And it would have sold well on all the consoles. It would have sold well on the PC. So, but it does excite me to see that Square Enix is, they're opening up their legs and letting more platforms in. So that's great.
Yes, letting all the flies in. So it was on VHS. And
Thank you.
do you know James Woods was in that movie? And so was Keith David, and Ving Rhames was in that movie.
Yeah,
as well.
Ving Rhames was one of the soldiers in their little group of buddies.
Mm-hmm.
James Woods, if I remember correctly, he was the evil bad guy.
He was General Hine.
Yeah.
Which Keith David did a council member. Council member number 1.
See, Keith David is so goddamn awesome. I love Keith David. And They Live. I mean, I love Roddy Piper, but Keith David carried that movie with him. I mean, they were both piggybacking. That's such a great damn movie. I am here to chew bubblegum and kick ass, and I'm all out of bubblegum. Just walks into a bank and says that almost identically to what I just said. And I love it. So, anyways, back to the Keith David, Roddy Piper show. No, Square Enix has definitely need to open up their hearts to other platforms. My only concern would be really high definition games like Final Fantasy series. Trying to put that onto the Switch is a lot harder. So do you skip the Switch? Do you dumb down the graphics on the game? How do you handle that? I mean, that's tech stuff I don't get into, but that would be my only real concern. But Square Enix puts a lot of games out that don't take that kind of graphical horsepower. That would work definitely on the Switch. And they put stuff exclusively on Switch. Octopath Traveler was originally exclusive to Switch. And then it went over to Xbox, I believe, and PlayStation. And it's a fantastic freaking game. So I don't know how well it's sold on Switch alone, but I'm sure it's doing okay because they made a sequel. But that's all I got to say about that.
Yeah, and Octopath Traveler 2, I don't think came out on Xbox. It came out on PlayStation and Switch, but I don't believe it came out on Xbox.
Yeah, so I don't know if it's because
they did Triangle Strategy. I think that only came out on the Switch, right? Brave Bravely Default, I think, came out on PlayStation.
PlayStation,
Switch,
yes, that one did.
yeah. So I don't know. No, that one, Bravely Default 2, is just Switch and Windows, it says. I thought I had it for PlayStation. Maybe I have it for Switch. I don't remember. But anyway, yeah, I think multi-platform is a better way for them to go. And you're right. What do they do about the Switch? I mean, we'll have to see with the Switch 2, but it's better for a lot of these large publishers that aren't owned by Microsoft or Sony to for the majority of the games, depending on what the game is, right? To go multi-platform with it, right? If it's a lesser game or Japanese style, more Japanese market type of game, then maybe we don't put it on the Xbox, because again, Xbox is not big in Japan, but because they do that with those smaller titles.
PC is still big in Japan though, so is the Switch.
Yeah.
So if they're not bringing it to America or Europe, yeah, go ahead, keep it on the PlayStation. I mean, that's the largest base in Japan. So, I mean, Switch still carries really well, but yeah, it's a double-edged sword, depending on the title. Large titles like Final Fantasy, their multi-platform would be the best way to go. Smaller titles like Bravely Default, that could probably be an exclusive because production in it probably isn't as high. And they're not gonna, but you'd still get some sales, off the other platforms. So I don't know what it takes to put that out there onto Steam or put that out there onto the Switch, what the cost to, value ratio would be. Do you have to sell, are you required by the platform to sell so many or pay so much to put it on there? Do they cut percentages, things like that? I don't know all those numbers, but it still just seems no matter where they're at, put it on what you can, where you can.
Yeah. Well, I mean, they just released Saga Emerald Beyond, and that came out to everything but Xbox. But I played the demo for that on PlayStation, and I was not impressed. So I didn't much care for it. Unfortunately, I was hoping it'd be a cool RPG to play, but I'm like, and it's gotten pretty mixed reviews. So, but yeah, I mean, hopefully they come out with, put more games on everything, because even those Japan only games, like, that's one thing I like about the PlayStation is a lot of those games do not come to Xbox, so I can play those particular ones on PlayStation, or they usually do come to Steam, or if they don't, they definitely come to PlayStation most of the time. So I can, for me, I play a lot of those one-off, weird one-off Japanese RPG games that no one else has heard of. I play a lot of those, and sometimes they turn out to be really cool.
But you find some gems that you tell me and Pat about that. For the most part, if we end up playing it, it's you got us by the gotchas. It's like you were not kidding. I mean, you've picked several games that have never hit our radars. Not just JRPGs, but just games in general that aren't on the radar. Holy crap, this is awesome.
Yeah.
And I love a good JRPG. And, I think our whole group is pretty good with JRPGs. Pat's only problem is he wants one that's up to date. He doesn't like the older stuff. So, but yeah, Square-Enix opening up their legs, letting in Xbox, Steam. It kind of came out weird, didn't it? Allowing people
dropping their pants.
They're bloomers, letting in the Xbox and the old Nintendo, and the Steams. But yeah, they need to do it. Profitability alone would be the reason to do that, especially if it's a Final Fantasy title. So
and what was the last? Allow more people to play them, right?
15 was the last one they put out on Xbox, if I remember correctly. And that really sucked because 15 was a fantastic version of the game. It felt Final Fantasy. It felt, even though it was an action RPG, it still had a little bit of a classic feel to it. But yeah, they gotta be more open onto the other consoles and the PC, definitely.
Yeah. Yeah, and 16 was a good game. It was just like I said, they could call it something I feel like they could call it something totally different, and you wouldn't know the difference if they took all the references out to
Yeah.
Final Fantasy and just called it something different. You wouldn't know, right?
No.
It was a good game in its own right, but it didn't feel like a Final Fantasy game. It felt like its
An
own thing,
RPG of
an
its own
RPG
thing.
with
Yeah.
with a good story. It had a really great
Yeah.
story,
It
and
was fine.
voice acting
I
and stuff like
liked
that.
I
But
liked parts, like when the demo came out. I fell in love with that demo before the game released. Loved it. And to me, that demo was like it was like a trailer for a great movie, but the best parts are right there in the trailer.
yeah,
That's what I got from the demo. But it's not a bad game at all.
no,
It's just not Final Fantasy.
yeah, it just doesn't feel like Final Fantasy.
No.
Like I said, it feels like its own thing. 16 did. It felt like its own game. Not a Final Fantasy game, just its own, like a different series altogether.
Yeah.
But
And
anywho,
maybe Square Enix needs to start looking at that too. Maybe
yeah,
trying to create a new series of games. I think they try and then they end up slapping Final Fantasy on it.
right.
Yeah. Just like Spirits Within.
Yeah, because
Could have called it anything.
I
But
could have called it, because that besides the references, it had
Final
nothing to do with
Fantasy
Final
is a
Fantasy.
name that every gamer recognizes, even some
Right.
non-gamers. My wife's not a
Right.
gamer. She knows Final Fantasy,
Right.
especially 8, because that's the best one.
Right. Yeah. So yeah, I mean, if you're gonna watch a movie, watch Advent Children. It's a much better Final Fantasy movie. But um, if you haven't seen Spirits Within, it's an adventure. So go watch it sometime. Other than that, do you have anything else you want to talk about, Shane?
Nope. Just I can't wait to see what Square Enix does, and will Sony lose their mud if they start putting stuff out on other platforms?
Yeah.
At least Final Fantasy.
Who knows? I guess we'll see.
Yeah.
But let us know down in the comments below what you all think. Other than that, thanks for watching, everybody. Make sure to like the video. Make sure to, if you liked it, make sure to subscribe. Do us a favor, help us out. Hit the subscribe button. If you like this content and you like what you're hearing, and you like just blabbering on about games and stuff like that, hit that subscribe button. Hit the bell notifications to stay up to date with new videos that we do all the time. And we will see you next time.
See ya.